What's up, RotoBallers? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jorden Hill. Week 11 is here, which means it's trade deadline week in many leagues, so hopefully you made the moves you needed to make and are ready to set your lineups for Sunday and Monday's games. I'm here to help you do exactly that as we take a look at RotoBaller's consensus half PPR rankings for each position and talk about a few of the more interesting players in greater detail. Let's start things off at the quarterback position with number 10, Justin Fields. Fields was a top 3 fantasy QB with 4 passing touchdowns in each of his last 2 fully healthy games. It's fair to be a little concerned about him in his first game back from a thumb injury on his throwing hand, but he has a lot of upside in a solid matchup against the Lions. The Lions allow the 10th most fantasy points per game to the quarterback position. Detroit has been good against the run this season, and we know that offense can score, so Chicago is likely going to have to rely on Fields to keep them in the game. Moving up 2 spots to number 8, we have Brock Purdy. The second-year pro struggled in weeks 6 through 8, but has been pretty great in games with a healthy Deebo Samuel. This included a bounce-back performance last week in which Purdy threw for 296 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Jaguars. He has an excellent matchup at home on Sunday against the Buccaneers, who were famously torched by CJ Stroud 2 weeks ago and have allowed the 7th most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season. And up at number 4 is Josh Allen, who disappointed last week in what should have been a plus matchup against the Broncos. Allen is struggling with turnovers right now, and this Bills offense just doesn't look like the dominant force that we've been accustomed to seeing over the past couple of years. He unfortunately will be in a tough spot this week against the Jets, the 6th most difficult opponent for fantasy QBs. Back in week 1, Allen scored as the QB 20 with 3 interceptions against New York. Still, he has a rushing touchdown in 4 straight games, and his ceiling remains as high as anyone's, so he needs to stay locked into starting lineups. Kicking things off at running back is number 12, Javante Williams. Williams has really stepped it up in recent weeks, getting a lot of work and finishing as a top 10 fantasy RB in each of his past 2 games. It seems that the Broncos are finally comfortable giving him a full workload after he suffered a torn ACL early last season. He has a difficult test this week against the Vikings, who surrender the 6th fewest fantasy points per game to running backs. Nonetheless, Williams has been dominating carries in Denver and being utilized as a receiver, so he can be started with confidence. Coming in at number 7 is Brian Robinson. Somehow, someway, Robinson is the RB4 in half PPR scoring this season. He's coming off of a huge game last week where he had 6 receptions for 119 yards and a touchdown. Antonio Gibson is still seeing plenty of opportunities as a pass-catching back, but Gibson is yet to practice this week and is in danger of missing Sunday's contest against the New York Giants. If Gibson is inactive, Robinson could be the focal point of the Commanders' offense, with the Giants' defense allowing the 9th most fantasy points per game to running backs. With New York struggling to do much of anything offensively right now, Robinson could be in line for a ton of volume if Washington gets out to a comfortable lead. And at number 6 is Devon Achane, with his teammate Raheem Mostert coming in at number 5. The explosive rookie Achane took the league by storm back in week 3 when he scored 4 touchdowns and accumulated 233 total yards. His hot streak continued over the next 2 games until he suffered an unfortunate knee injury. He's back and set to face the Raiders this week, who allow the 3rd most yards and 7th most fantasy points per game to running backs. Both Miami backs carry a ton of upside this week and are capable of taking one to the house on any given play. Taking a look at our wide receiver rankings, at number 11 is Devon Smith. Smith had a cold streak earlier this year, but he bounced back in weeks 8 and 9, scoring as a wide receiver 1 in both contests. He comes out of the bye to a relatively difficult matchup against the Chiefs, but let's not forget that Dallas Goedert will be out as he continues to recover from a broken forearm. Smith built a really strong rapport with Jalen Hurts last season between weeks 11 and 15 with Goedert out, and this chemistry continued into the playoffs as Smith outproduced A.J. Brown. He even tallied 8 receptions for 100 yards against Kansas City in the Super Bowl. I think we can expect another strong outing from him in this rematch on Monday night. Up at number 7 is Devonte Adams, who's probably been one of the most disappointing players in fantasy this season. He's only scored as a wide receiver 1 once this year, and he hasn't scored a touchdown since week 3. Quarterback Aiden O'Connell doesn't inspire a lot of confidence, but he did target Adams 13 times last week in a difficult matchup against the Jets. The Dolphins are much kinder to wide receivers and quarterbacks, and we know that Miami's offense is going to put up points. Adams should be heavily involved, and hopefully he finds his way back into the end zone on Sunday. Kicking off the top 3 is Amon-Ra St. Brown. On paper, Chicago is a middle-of-the-road matchup for wide receivers, but it doesn't matter one bit. St. Brown has been one of the most consistent fantasy assets all season, and he's the wide receiver 7 overall, despite missing a game due to injury and already having his bye. He's eclipsed 100 yards or scored a touchdown in every game that he's played. We talked about this contest a little bit earlier with Justin Fields, and it has a healthy projected point total around 47.5. The Lions are a well-oiled machine right now, and the Sun God is one of the biggest reasons why. Let's wrap things up with tight ends, and at number 9 we have Jake Ferguson. Ferguson has scored in 3 straight games and appears to be a favorite target of Dak Prescott, who is on an absolute tear right now. Unfortunately, this matchup against the Panthers isn't great, as Carolina allows the 4th fewest fantasy points per game to the tight end position. Still, it's obvious that Ferguson is a focal point in the red zone, and all it takes is a touchdown for him to pay off in starting lineups. With Dallas's offense clicking, he remains a must-start option. Coming in at number 5 is Trey McBride. McBride was playing behind Zach Ertz to begin the season, but he's suddenly taken off with 2 top 3 fantasy performances in the past 3 weeks. In Kyler Murray's return last week, he secured 8 of his 9 targets for 131 yards. Ertz will be out again this week when the Cardinals face the Texans, who have been quite good against wide receivers, but have given up a lot of production to fantasy tight ends. And finally, at number 4 we have Dalton Kincaid. Kincaid has been excellent with Dawson Knox on IR, averaging 8 targets per game over the past 4 weeks and scoring twice in that span. We mentioned earlier that the Jets have a great pass defense, but they've been more vulnerable to tight ends than you might expect and have allowed a league-leading 6 touchdowns to the position. Kincaid has established himself as a lineup lock for as long as Knox is out, but he's probably earned a valuable role in Buffalo for the rest of the season. Hope you guys enjoyed. Feel free to drop your start-sit questions in the comments section down below. Also, please remember to leave a like on this video and subscribe to RotoBaller to stay up to date with all of our fantasy football analysis that'll help you win big in 2023. Thanks so much for tuning in, and best of luck in your Week 11 fantasy matchups.